So, Rudy, okay, conservatives, big share of the vote, most since 1988, but at the end of the day, coming up short. What was your reaction when you saw what happened last night?
I think that for all parties, you can see it half empty or half full. As you said, conservative, a good turnout in Ontario, best score since Brian Mulroney, even 41% is better than what the polls expected, and also better than, for example, Stephen Harper in 2011 when he got a majority government, but not enough to become a minority conservative government. Same, I believe, for the Liberals. I mean, if you look at the polls 2 months ago, they were going to lose, and now they're at least a minority government, but not enough, missing, I believe, 3 seats to have a majority government. So I think that you can, for both parties, you can see it as half empty, half full. The really difficult part, I believe, is for the NDP. They are not an official party status anymore because they have less than 12 seats. I believe it's the final count is 7 seats, and you can see it by having the leader, Jacques Singh, resigning. And the Bloc Québécois also losing 10, 11 seats. It's going to be hard also for them. But at the same time, there were some polls that were saying that they were going to lose more seats. So at least they were able to keep at least those seats and being able to have kind of the balance of power. Is it going to be the Bloc or is it going to be the NDP who's going to have the balance of power? That's going to be the question. Now that the NDP is kind of doesn't have a leader, for sure they're going to support, for example, the upcoming budget and upcoming legislation. But we'll see how the Bloc is going to play their card in the following months, especially with the U.S. and Canada negotiation.
Well, so let me ask, how much power does the Bloc have? First of all, they lose 10 seats, and I know they still have, more thanks to the NDP, down to 7, as you said. Do you really see the Bloc trying to use this balance of, power? Because they don't really. If there's 169 Liberal seats, even with 144 the Conservatives have, they're not going to force a change. So how much power do they really have?
Actually, they do. For example, in parliamentary committees, the NDP doesn't have a status anymore. So if the Liberals want to pass any legislation at committee, for example, they will need the support of the Bloc. The Bloc can control, for example, the agenda. They can filibuster if they want. So in terms of parliamentary duties, the Bloc still have a lot of cards. Just for question period, for example, the Bloc is going to have a lot more opportunities to ask questions to the government than the NDP because the NDP doesn't have a status as an official party anymore. So you can see that for certain things, the Bloc Québécois, especially for the negotiation, for example, they can call ministers before committee. They have enough votes, for example, to make it happen.
So let me ask one other thing. With respect to Pierre Poilievre himself, we found out, and it took a while to find out, but he lost his riding in Carleton. So he's not an elected representative anymore. There's a lot of speculation as to what might happen next. A by-election call, but the Liberals, will have 6 months to do that if they wanted to. I had James Meny, one of our commentators, on earlier on, and we discussed this whole idea of, finding a safe riding, having Pierre Poilievre run again. I want you to hear what he had to say.
Conservative will give up their seat, a safe seat to Poilievre in a by-election to get him back into the House of Commons.
What do you think, Rudy? Is that the best way to move forward for the Conservatives, to put him in a safe riding just to get him back in the House? Or does someone who led this party and could not, win, is it time for him to step down? He lost in his own riding.
No, I don't think so. I think the Conservatives are going to allow him to continue for sure. He's going to have a confidence vote, and it's up to the leader to decide on the timing. But he will have a confidence vote. But yes, I do believe that the strategy now is to find him a riding. By the way, it happened to Robert Bourassa in the past. He was elected premier but lost his own riding, and it's exactly what happened. An MP, an MNA stepped down, and there was a by-election. So yes, I believe that will be the plan. And I do believe that Pierre Poilievre still has the confidence of caucus and also members, just because obviously he was able to get a good score in Ontario. He's able now, there's some, as I said, half full, half empty. He was able to get some votes in Ontario. He was able to get some blue-collar union worker votes, for example, in Ontario, auto workers. So that's something that the Conservative in the past were not able to achieve, and also to have the youth vote. It is true, he lost his riding, and he'll need to find another riding. But I do believe that for the moment, he's going to be able to continue. And it looks a little bit like what happened to Stephen Harper. Stephen Harper, in 2004, against Paul Martin, he wasn't able to get a minority Conservative government. And what happened 2 years later, there was an election and the Conservative won a minority. So it looks like the Conservative will give him another chance at this. Those are the signals at the moment.
Yeah, I should point out for people, because we always talk about this minority versus majority government, assuming it stays this way, my understanding is even though Terrebonne is now flipped and has gone Liberal, which takes them to 169, there are really only 2 more seats apparently still left to be decided. Even if the Liberals got both, it still would not be a majority. So minority governments typically last how long?
Normally it's 18 months, so 1.5 years to 30 months. So we could be in the polls in about 2 years. As an average, but obviously the job number one of Mr. Carney is the Canada-U.S. negotiation. As you know, the U.S. and President Trump is coming to Canada in June because Canada is hosting the G7 with other world leaders. So there's going to be a face-to-face. Mark Carney, I believe it was reported that just had a phone call with President Trump. So now we'll see what happens with the Canada-U.S. negotiation or renegotiation. And I think we'll see also Mr. Carney needs to appoint a new cabinet. We'll see if there are going to be some changes in cabinet, have a throne speech, have the House of Commons resume. And I'm for sure he's going to be allowed to govern at least, I believe, for a year. Because don't forget, the NDP is going to have a new leader. They will have a leadership. So they don't have the power. They don't have the money to have another election anytime soon.
So let me ask you, if you can, what do you think needs to happen next? We know, and I asked our audience this earlier in the show, there's a very big divide in this country, and this election shows it, east to west, if you will. Yep. Danielle Smith has not minced her words with respect to the Liberals and Mark Carney. What does Mark Carney need to do next?
Look, his priority needs to be obviously the unity of the country. And I'm not just saying this because it's Mark Carney. It is the number one priority for any Prime Minister of Canada, especially with what's happening in Quebec. As you know, there's going to be an election in 2026. If he's still Prime Minister in 2026, he will maybe be there when there's going to be an election with the Parti Québécois. And also, as you just said, Alberta is angry. They want a pipeline, for example, or an energy corridor. So we'll see what's going to happen when it comes to natural resources and what's going to happen during the negotiation because obviously all provinces, especially Ontario, wants to be protected when it comes to autos. Alberta wants to be able to export their oil and gas. Even Quebec is very strong when it comes to the supply management. They want to be protected when it comes to supply management. So Mr. Carney needs to tread very, very carefully in terms of the national unity because if he doesn't manage it well, for example, it can open the door for the PQ in Quebec in 2026 or for Alberta to make some sovereignty actions, for example.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Rudy, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Aaron.